Welcome to the November 3rd, 2022 Board of Zoning Appeals meeting. We'll go ahead and call the meeting to order at 6:01. We'll start with a roll call here. I know William Scales, he's absent tonight. Jeff Fleschauer.
Here.
Greg Caesar.
Here.
And Joel Tomlin is absent. Jonathan Langley is here as well. Staff? Announcements.
Yes, sorry. The only announcement I have is that we are having some technical difficulties, so our screens aren't working currently. I apologize for that. We're trying to get IT involved, and hopefully those can get pulled up, but I wanted to make everyone in the audience aware that unfortunately we will not be able to pull up maps or specific documents. The live feed will show the map for each item, so please keep an eye on that screen, but that's as much as we can do right now.
Okay.
Apologize for that.
Yeah, no problem. For the applicants present too, we do have digital copies of everything, so we can pull that up. So if you're referencing in your presentation items, we'll be able to see that also. Any other announcements at all? Okay. All right, so next we'll move to consideration of approval of the October 6th, 2022 meeting minutes. Is there a motion for approval?
I'd just like to make one adjustment to the minutes.
Sure.
On the call to order under board members absent, it says none from last week's meeting, and there were at least, Jeff, I don't believe you were here, and I don't know if Joel was here either, so two that were not in attendance, yeah. But other than that, motion to approve with those 2 points added.
Okay, motion for approval with amendments. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Jeff. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. So no one's opposed, so the minutes are approved. Nice catch, Greg, there. I looked at all the minutes word for word, but I didn't look at that section, so.
That's why there's more than one of us.
Details, I love it. All right, so next is consideration of the 2023 BZA calendar. I've looked at that. Have the other board members had a chance to look at that? Okay.
Make a motion to approve the calendar.
Okay, motion for approval made by Greg. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Jeff. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Seeing no one opposed, our 2023 calendar is approved. It's hard to believe we're in November now. Like, we're approving the 2023 calendar. So next, it's our first item tonight. It's going to be a variance request to allow more than the maximum number of retaining walls on a site, and a variance request to allow for a taller than allowable retaining wall within a front yard, and a variance request to allow for a taller than allowable retaining wall within a side rear yard, and then last, a variance request to allow for encroachments into areas with slopes of 20% or greater for the property located at 391 Lady of the Lake Lane. Staff?
Thank you and good evening. This 1.34 acre lot is located at 391 Lady of the Lake Lane within the Avalon subdivision and is zoned PD for Planned District. The applicant wishes to develop the parcel with a single-family home, the designs of which can be seen in the applicant's submitted materials. The Avalon subdivision was approved prior to the establishment of the HHO district and the 500-foot buffer of the hillside overlay. The property now lies within the 500-foot buffer and the hillside overlay. The majority of the lot is covered in slopes with grades over 20%, making the buildable area for the property just a very small portion of the site. This topography also creates difficulties for site design and developments, as the Franklin zoning ordinance does not allow for development on slopes greater than 20% to protect natural features. In addition, the Avalon subdivision architectural guidelines require a two-story house to be a minimum of 5,000 square feet. Staff has determined that 4 variances would be needed to approve the provided designs. These variances are to allow more than the maximum allowed 3 retaining walls on a residential site, to allow for retaining walls to be higher than the maximum 2 feet when in a front yard, to allow for retaining walls to be higher than the maximum 6 feet when in a rear or side yard, and to allow encroachments into areas with slopes of 20% or greater. Now I will go into staff analysis. I'm going to start with the first request, and I'll read through the 3 criteria for this request, and then I'm just going to go into staff analysis for the other 3 requests, if that's okay. Please let me know if you'd like me to reiterate any of the criteria. Criteria 1, where by reason of exceptional narrowness, shallowness, or shape of the specific property at the time of the enactment of the zoning ordinance, or by reason of exceptional topographic conditions, or other extraordinary or exceptional situation or condition, such a piece of property is not able to accommodate development as required under this ordinance. The subject property is located within the Avalon subdivision with over 20% slopes across the majority of the property. These exceptional topographic conditions require the use of retaining walls to provide effective drainage, access, and support for development. The Franklin zoning ordinance allows a maximum of 3 retaining walls for a residential lot. The applicant is requesting a total of 5 retaining walls. The applicant has determined that this is the minimum number of retaining walls required to develop a single-family home on this lot. Due to the exceptional slope conditions across the site, staff finds the criteria for request 1 to be met. Criteria 2, the strict application of any provision enacted under the zoning ordinance would result in peculiar and exceptional practical difficulties or to exceptional or undue hardship upon the owner of the property. Strict application of the zoning ordinance would create practical difficulties in the development of the site due to the exceptional topographic conditions that exist. Due to the exceptional slope conditions across the site, more than 3 retaining walls are needed to support development of the site. Staff finds this criteria for request 1 to be met. Criteria 3, such relief may be granted without substantial detriment to the public good and without substantially impairing the purpose and intent of the zoning ordinance. Allowing for additional retaining walls on the site would not be a detriment to the public good, nor would it impair the purpose and intent of the zoning ordinance. The zoning ordinance limits the number of retaining walls on a residential site in order to prevent a site from being dominated by retaining walls, which may result in aesthetic concerns for neighboring property owners and the community. Because several neighboring lots within the Avalon subdivision have also had to implement unique retaining walls, this development would not contradict the aesthetic qualities of the neighborhood. In addition, the applicant has determined that 5 retaining walls is the minimum number necessary for development on this lot. Therefore, there would not be an excess of retaining walls dominating the site. Staff finds this criteria for request 1 to be met. Now I will go over staff analysis for request 2, which is the maximum height of front yard retaining walls. Regarding criteria 1, there are exceptional topographic conditions which require the use of retaining walls to provide effective drainage, access, and support for development. The Franklin zoning ordinance allows for retaining walls located in the front yard of a residence to be a maximum of 2 feet in height. The applicant has requested retaining wall heights up to 5 feet in the front yard of the property to support the driveway. In order to build the driveway at a slope between 14% as required, the retaining walls supporting the driveway would need to be 5 feet tall. Due to these exceptional conditions across the site, staff finds this criteria for request 2 to be met. Regarding criteria 2, strict application of the zoning ordinance would create practical difficulties in the development of the site due to exceptional topographic conditions that exist. Due to the exceptional slope conditions across the site, retaining walls higher than 2 feet are necessary to support the driveway according to regulation. Therefore, staff finds this criteria for request 2 to be met. Regarding criteria 3, allowing for taller retaining walls in the front yard of the site would not be a detriment to public good, nor would it impair the purpose and intent of the zoning ordinance. The zoning ordinance limits the number and height of retaining walls on a residential site in order to prevent a site from being dominated by retaining walls, which may result in aesthetic concerns for neighboring property owners and the community. Because several neighboring lots within the Avalon subdivision have also had to implement unique retaining walls, this development would not contradict the aesthetic qualities of the neighborhood. In addition, the applicant has determined that 5-foot retaining walls are the minimum height necessary to support the proposed driveway. Staff finds this criteria for request 2 to be met. Now I'll go through staff analysis for request 3, which is the maximum height of side or rear yard retaining walls. Regarding criteria 1, There are exceptional topographic conditions which require the use of retaining walls to provide effective drainage, access, and support for development. The Franklin zoning ordinance allows for retaining walls located in the rear or side yard of a residence to be a maximum of 6 feet in height. The applicant has requested retaining wall heights up to 10 feet in the rear yard and 1 side yard of the property to ensure proper drainage and structural integrity of the proposed development. Due to the exceptional slope conditions across the site, staff finds this criteria for request 3 to be met. Regarding criteria 2, strict application of the zoning ordinance would create practical difficulties in the development of the site due to the exceptional topographic conditions that exist. Due to the exceptional slope conditions across the site, retaining walls of greater height than the zoning ordinance allows are necessary to support a single-family home on this site. Therefore, staff finds this criteria for request 3 to be met. Regarding criteria 3, allowing for taller retaining walls in the rear or side yard of this site would not be a detriment to the public good, nor would it impair the purpose and intent of the zoning ordinance. The zoning ordinance limits the number of height of retaining walls on a residential site to prevent a site from being dominated by retaining walls, which may result in aesthetic concerns for neighboring property owners and the community. Because several neighboring lots within the Avalon subdivision have also had to implement unique retaining walls, this development would not contradict the aesthetic qualities of the neighborhood. In addition, the applicant has determined that 10-foot retaining walls are the minimum height necessary to support the proposed development. Staff finds this criteria for request 3 to be met. Now I will go through staff analysis for request 4, which is encroachment into areas with slopes of 20% or greater. Regarding criteria 1, the slopes on this lot lead to exceptional topographic conditions which require the encroachment onto 20% slopes in order to provide access and support development. The Franklin zoning ordinance does not allow for encroachment into areas with 20% or greater slopes, so the applicant has requested encroachment into areas of 20% or greater slope to build the proposed residential structure. Staff recognizes the exceptional slope conditions across the site and believes that encroachment into areas with a slope of 20% is necessary in this case. For these reasons, staff finds this criteria for request 4 to be met. Regarding criteria 2, strict application of the zoning ordinance would create practical difficulties in the development of this site due to exceptional topographic conditions and the Avalon subdivision architectural guidelines. The Avalon PUD subdivision was approved by the City of Franklin prior to the adoption of the Hillcrest Overlay Zoning District and today's applicable slope development standards. Development on the steep hillsides was anticipated when the development was originally approved, so the current zoning ordinance creates exceptional practical difficulties for the Avalon subdivision that was established prior to the updated zoning requirements. Seeing as slopes greater than 20% cover most of this site, the application of the zoning ordinance would prevent development on this site. For these reasons, staff finds this criteria for request 4 to be met. Regarding criteria 3, allowing for encroachment into areas with slopes of 20% or greater on the site would not be a detriment to the public good, nor would it impair the purpose and intent of the zoning ordinance. The lot is currently neighbored by other lots with similar topography that have utilized similar grading techniques. The intent of the zoning ordinance is to allow a single-family residential home on this lot, and this variance is the minimum necessary deviation from the requirements in the zoning ordinance in order to develop a single-family home on the lot, given the current conditions of the site. Staff finds this criteria for request 4 to be met. Recommended motion. Staff recommends that the Board of Zoning Appeals move to approve the variance request to allow more than the maximum number of retaining walls on a site, and a variance request to allow for a taller than allowable retaining wall within a front yard, and a variance to allow for a taller than allowable retaining wall within a rear and side yard, and a variance to allow for encroachments into areas with slopes of 20% or greater for the property located at 391 Lady of the Lake Lane, because the criteria for granting a variance have been met. This concludes my presentation.
Thank you, staff. Is the applicant present? If you could step forward for us and state your name for the record.
Brian Holcomb with M2 Group on behalf of Matt Bryant. I would just add that, as she stated, most of the site is covered with slopes over 20%. And I would say it's 85% of the lot has slopes over 20%. And even up to 50 feet coming into the lot is 50% slope. So it's really hard, it's really challenging to minimize the amount of excavation, if you will, and minimize the height of walls as you go up that slope. And keep your driveway steep enough at the same time to where you don't have extremely tall walls in the back or tall walls in the front. So we feel like we've done that, and we went through several design iterations to get this to the best situation possible. And this is what we came up with. And we're going to get a landscape architect involved to mask these walls as much as possible to keep it looking the way it should and to avoid, causing an eyesore for anyone else. And, the walls, they're 5 feet in the front, yes, but at most portions, they're not 5 feet. They're shorter than 5 feet. They taper down to nearly nothing, and it's the same in the back. They're 10 feet in some instances, but like I said, they taper down to 8 feet, let's say. So that's it. Thank you.
Okay, I'll ask this question. I think it'll come up in a couple of minutes. So on that, there's a plan included that shows, I think you just mentioned 5 feet on the retaining wall heights. Is the design far enough along to where that the heights are good on that plan?
I do believe that it's far enough along to where those won't get any high, plus or minus 6 inches, let's say.
Okay, thank you.
They're not going to be 6, 8, 10 feet, so.
Okay, thanks.
Yep.
So next, we'll open the public comment. Are there any citizen comments on this item? Seeing none, is there a motion to close the public comment?
Motion to close.
Second.
Motion to close made by Jeff, second by Greg. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Seeing none opposed, public comment's closed. I think on this item, so some of these variances are going to be, I would say, blanket based on approval of the others. So my thought is, let's start with front yard retaining wall, go to side and rear, and if there's height questions, conditions there, if we approve those, the rest of the variances may fall in line. So if
Could
it's
I,
okay-
could I make not a dissenting, but just maybe another thought? Because to me, the 20% slope is kind of one that either we approve 20% or we approve none of the other heights.
Yep.
So perhaps if we
Start with a blanket and
start
go-
there and
Yep.
then go, it may save us time, may not.
No, that's a good thought. So let's do that then. So let's start with, I think if we combine all these, we're going to end up in a motion nightmare. So let's
You're right.
avoid that and take them one by one. Let's start with the variance request to allow encroachments into areas with slopes of 20% or greater. So let's start there. I think that matches what Greg had mentioned.
Yeah, because that's the only one that is comprehensive, right? And so if we make a decision on one way or the other, it probably doesn't make sense for us to spend time if the variance isn't approved on the 20%.
Yep, totally agree with you there.
position.
So let's start there then. I'm ready to entertain a motion. I know we'll have some discussion on these as we move along, but
Can I ask before I present a motion, staff, would that be okay,
yeah,
John?
absolutely.
Mr. Chair, we received the 2 notices that are on the website from the citizens. Thank you for sending those across and then also making those available to everyone else. Were there any other calls or concerns voiced?
No.
Okay, thank you for that. I'll start with a motion. I would make a motion to disapprove the encroachment into the 20-foot, in the 20-degree hillside hill view. Let me get down to the motion here. Make a motion to disapprove the variance request to allow for encroachments into areas with slopes of 20% or greater for the property located at 391 Lady of the Lake Lane. Because in my opinion, the criteria for granting this variance has not been met.
Okay, motion for disapproval of that variance is made by Greg. Is there a second? I'm going to second that motion for discussion.
I appreciate that.
So I think my concern or question really from staff, just reading through the staff report, my concern there is that we've platted a lot in the past. I believe we need to make that developable. There's going to have to be something on that lot. I could be incorrect about that, but that would be my concern about limiting all development over 20% slopes.
Well, and that's what Ariella pointed out in her staff report, is that this entire subdivision was developed prior to the hillside overlay and the 20% slope restrictions. So it was thought at the time by our Board of Mayor and Aldermen that that was an acceptable situation. It's just the current zoning ordinance that does not allow that.
So I think that's my concern is, I think we run into issues there on building it all, potentially. And I don't know that that's a acceptable legal alternative.
I think that's a very valid point, Jonathan. I suppose the piece that I have trouble getting over, because it does have to make or satisfy all three, if you really look at the intent of the Hillside Hillview overlay and the rationale behind restricting development, it was to protect the beauty of the community and to protect the hillsides from unnecessary development and from encroachment and retaining walls and all the things that this particular property will require in order to be habitable by a reasonable sized home. And while I hate the particular difficulty that it would place on the owner of the property and their ability to develop it, I also think it speaks to the nature of why if we continue to make decisions or exceptions based on everyone else around, then you never protect and you never preserve. We allow things to just go by, and if that's the case, we probably shouldn't have enacted a Hillside Hillview overlay. But saying that, there is an opportunity to present to this board for exceptions where we think it's appropriate. And I think it's worth us having this discussion, because I do think, as you drive around Middle Tennessee, one of the things that is truly beautiful about our community that you can never get back is the hillside and the hill views. And if we don't take a position, unfortunately, the people who are here applying for this, it's not going to be something that I'm sure they're going to be favorable of. But I think for the greater good of the community, we at least should be having this conversation about why that was put in place in the first place.
I don't disagree with you. I think that given the circumstances, there's subdivisions right now in place that they've allowed. And there's some lots that are left in these particular areas that we need to consider. And we've already approved, 2 months ago, we gave that guy an approval on his walls, remember? 2 months ago.
I have trouble remembering items that aren't in front of me right now.
I want to make sure that we apply the new zoning where it needs to be applied and not burden those that are already in place in finishing out things that would be left undone otherwise. So I think we need to take that into consideration in each location, in my opinion.
I tend to agree. I think my first comment, that's my main concern, is just making sure for a platted lot, I think we have issues there of saying nothing can happen on this lot. Am I correct, staff? It is a platted lot currently, right? Okay. Yep. Any further discussion? I mean, I think it's a great point, Greg.
I do
a lot of
too.
times the
I do
board.
too, actually. I want to go on record as saying that I agree with the thought process as to, we should make it applicable. They're the ones that put it in place. We should be enforcing that. But I think there are certain circumstances that we need to consider when they come up, just like we did a couple months ago. Otherwise, that lot would not have been developed in any manner. It was not. You wouldn't have been able to do anything with it. I think the same situation applies here.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second for disapproval. You guys ready to vote? Okay. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay. Those not in favor?
Nay.
Aye. Okay. Yep, nay. So we have Greg in favor, so one yes, 2 noes on motion for disapproval. So motion fails. Is there another motion?
I'll make a motion to approve based on staff's recommendations, and they've met all the criteria.
Okay, motion for approval made by Jeff. I'll second that motion. I vote yes. So Jonathan votes yes. Jeff?
Yes.
Greg?
I'll vote no on that.
Okay. So 2-1, motion carries for approval of the slopes of 20% or greater variance. So that variance is approved. So next, let's move, we'll keep in that vein and move to the variance request to allow more than the maximum number of retaining walls on a site. Is there a motion on that variance?
Is this request number 1?
It is. Yep, that very first one.
I would make a motion, if you're okay
Go
with
ahead,
that.
go
Yeah.
ahead. I'm on your team.
Okay. To recommend approval for variance request number 1 to build a total of 5 retaining walls total on the site based on the criteria that authorizing the variance satisfies the 3 requirements.
I'll
Okay.
second.
Motion for approval made for, and I think we specify 5 retaining walls in that motion. And that's what's shown on the plan. Is there so Jeff seconded that. I think you just did, didn't you, Jeff?
Yes, I did.
Going back and forth between the plans here. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? All right, so no one opposed, so this motion is approved as well. So that's the second variance request. So we've got 4 here, halfway home. Third item, it's going to be a variance request to allow for a taller than allowable retaining wall within a front yard. And that should be number 2 in our packet here.
I'll make a motion to, maybe could I ask a question about that before I make a motion? And you had said, is it Bryant? Yes, sir. Mr. Holcomb? Yes, sir. You said that max was 5, but is it in the front yard is what I'm mainly concerned about? Because as I look at your plan, it looks like the backyard walls are obscured completely by the home.
That's correct.
Yeah.
And, you know, a lot of those, well, both walls in the, I want to say the southwest corner of the lot will be, you know, the foundation of the detached garage will mask that.
In the front yard?
Those walls are going to tie into
Okay.
the foundation of the garage. So you won't be able to see that at all. You're just going to see the garage, and then, you know, the rest is going to be covered by the house.
Okay.
And it's a heavily treed lot. I don't see any
And
way how that
we've
could be
got, and
visible.
maybe, I'm sorry to interrupt you,
No,
but
it's okay.
with the documents that were submitted, we didn't see like a street view perspective of anything other than the house. I guess that's maybe the one piece, if it's in our packet, I didn't see it. And I think that's the concern I'm wanting, because I think it's important for us to hear the concerns of neighbors who are
Sure.
nearby, who have said, we don't want a ton of wall to be visible from the street.
Yeah.
And the backyard, I don't think is a concern for me. I don't know about my colleagues on the board, but and I appreciate that they're only 5 feet, but are they 5-foot walls, or is it a 1-foot wall that goes to 5, maybe to a point?
The latter.
Okay,
Yeah, so the way it looks on the plan is not indicative to the way the walls will look in a 3D, you know, like you said, a street view or a rendering. Yeah, they start at 0 or next to 0, and then they taper up. Well, I'm talking about one in specific.
Sure.
But they taper up to 5 feet, and then they go back.
to match
Existing
the grade of the of the
Exactly.
land.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate it.
You bet.
All right, so we're still on the second variance request in the packet then. So we've got a motion, so retracing, I think we've got a motion for approval to 5 feet.
Correct.
Max. We have a second by Jeff. Any discussion?
Well, I think we need to be consistent in the manner, like I said, that we passed before. We did require some landscaping associated with the presentation of the wall to the front elevation. I don't remember if we put that caveat on the last approval or
And
not.
I think Mr. Holcomb said there would be vegetation, but we could certainly write that into to mask the visual component of the wall from the
I
street
know
level.
we're not designers, but do we have the authority to request that or put that?
So the builder informed me before the meeting that he has engaged a landscape architect to, and what, the landscape architect's currently looking at, screening the walls and doing a landscape plan for the site.
Okay.
Okay.
To answer your question, you can add conditions. Just consider how you would make them and how they would be
Right.
enforced.
Okay. I think that would be.
I think that's one thing, I'm not sure how, I guess, like, we could add conditions on, landscape materials, but then like, well, what is that? Is that, is that one bush? Is that a group of
Well,
monkey
maybe what we
grass?
could say, Jonathan, is we could add a condition to
Because staff will have
provide
to enforce the
landscape
back end of this too, so.
at least to cover 3 of the 5 feet, to bring it to that 2 foot visible.
I think that would be.
Is that, that's really tough for you guys
At our request.
to go out and
That way we specify.
review, but I think it's important that we break up the visual aspect of of the retaining wall.
Do you need to amend your motion?
Yes.
Are all of these retaining walls, I guess, are they in areas where either grass, or is it all connected? Is it connected to concrete and actual physical materials? Because that's where,
No, there's,
Do we have enough
There's-
room from the driveway to the face of the wall in order to put some landscaping in there?
Yes.
Create a buffer?
yes,
Okay.
yes, there is.
But it would be road to the face of the wall,
Correct.
right?
Okay.
Yeah,
good.
edge of
I'm sorry. Okay.
concrete or
Yeah, from
asphalt.
the other way.
To the, yes.
you want to amend your motion then, Greg?
However you want to state it, I'm for that.
Mr. Squires, can you help me as a simple amendment to my motion suitable at this point?
Yeah, at this point, we have a motion and a second on the floor, so you can amend that to include some conditions in order to vote on the amendment, then go back to the.
Okay. I'd like to make an amendment to my original motion, and that amendment would be that proper landscaping would be provided by the homeowner or an extension of him or her to reduce the visible height from the street to at least at most 2 feet. Is that clear? I may have confused myself.
What you're saying
on
is 2 feet visible.
I want
only
2 feet visible.
of the
So if it's a
wall.
5-foot wall, you gotta have something 3 feet to mask the bottom of it. Is that, do you guys understand what I'm,
Yes.
okay, sometimes.
I'll second.
Sometimes it comes out correctly and sometimes it doesn't. Appreciate that.
Yep, so a motion to amend the motion to add 2 feet visible on the wall height. So that would be 3 feet of vegetation to cover the bottom 3 feet of the wall. So motion made, second.
Yes, second.
Yeah,
All in
just-
favor?
As long as it says at least, because they can cover the whole wall if they want.
Yep.
I don't want you to have to get it to 3 feet and then do some work on the trees out there in a very particular way.
Okay, so I think we're clear there. I am on the wording, so motion made, second by Jeff. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right, so that motion to amend is approved. So back to the main motion now. Is there a motion for approval?
I think we are voting.
Yeah, we
On
made
this.
a
We're
motion.
either voting or amending again,
No, we're voting.
or deliberating, for people to deliberate on the amended motion.
Okay, you guys get, all right, so we're back to the main motion. We already have a first and a second, so now we're down to the vote then.
Yes.
That's correct. All right, so all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? All right, seeing none, then that variance request is approved. So that's variance request number 2.
Thank you.
Last one is variance request to allow for a taller than allowable retaining wall within a side rear yard.
And I wish you wouldn't have sat down. I do have one question. I know that it just says 10 feet, and then it kind of, the wall comes back and then splits off, and almost looks like it creates 2 tiers. At the 10-foot level, is it 10 foot as it nears the front of the house, and then maintains that, and then as the back part?
No, it tapers as well,
Okay.
because you're coming downhill severely from the back of the lot.
I would assume
So-
that based on the maps
Yeah,
here,
so
but
it,
yeah.
as you're coming downhill the lot, the wall is meeting it, you know.
Okay, so kind of the opposite is happening as you move to the back of the property, it's
Right.
getting taller. Okay.
Exactly.
And we don't have height of it as it nears the side front yard, we just have maximum height that it hits that 10 foot?
Correct.
Okay.
I think there are some spot elevations on the
There is.
on the plan, but they may be hard to read
Yeah,
on the laptop.
all right. If the chair would entertain a motion,
I'm ready, let's go.
I would like to present a motion that based on the reasoning detailed by staff prior, and in my opinion, it does satisfy the 3 criteria, I would move to approve the variance request number 4 to allow for the encroachment into, variance request number 3, I jumped down too far, to allow for up to a 10-foot retaining wall in the rear side yard of the residential site, and based on the criteria that authorize a variance to be established.
Okay, motion for approval up to 10 feet made by Greg. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Second by Jeff.
And then I don't know if for discussion on this, or is that where we are?
Absolutely.
I intentionally didn't put any vegetation requirement on this because I think the majority of the wall is screened by the home itself. But the request is asking for 2 10-foot walls, correct?
That's
So
correct.
that's 20 foot of wall. I'm certain that they're going to put some sort of landscape back there, but if you think it's important to break that up, I would be super supportive of an amendment. But if you believe that the house itself obscures it, then I'm also comfortable there.
That's the intent, is to create a really nice livable space back there with, you know, so they're not staring at 2 10-foot walls.
Sure.
I think I'm good if it's behind the home without vegetation. If it's placed there after the fact, I'm fine. I don't feel like we need to amend it. Jeff may feel
No,
differently.
I'm okay. It's on the
Okay.
side of the house, right? We're talking about the side now.
In the rear.
Well, the side and the back as well.
Okay, all right.
So motion for approval made up to 10 feet in the side and rear yard. Have a second by Jeff. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Anyone opposed? All right, seeing none, that variance is approved as well.
Thank you.
I think that covers all of item number 3. Greg has really done the heavy lifting for us there on the motions. So thank you.
You're welcome.
All right. Item number 4. It's going to be a variance request to allow more than the maximum number of retaining walls on a site. That's the first one. The second one is a variance request to allow for a taller than allowable retaining wall within a front yard. And then the third one is a variance request to allow for encroachments into areas with slopes of 20% or greater for the property located at 326 Lionheart Way. Staff?
Thank you. This 1.2 acre lot is located at 326 Lionheart Way within the Avalon subdivision and is zoned PD for Plan District. The applicant wishes to develop the parcel with a single-family home, the designs of which can be seen in the applicant's submittal materials. The Avalon subdivision was approved prior to the establishment of the HHO district and the 500-foot buffer of the hillside overlay. This property now lies within the 500-foot buffer of the hillside overlay. The majority of the lot is covered in slopes with grades over 20%, making the buildable area for the property just a small portion of the site. This topography also creates difficulties for site design and development, as the Franklin zoning ordinance does not allow for development of slopes greater than 20% to protect natural features. In addition, the Avalon subdivision architectural guidelines require two-story houses to be a minimum of 5,000 square feet. Staff has determined that 3 variances would be needed to approve the provided designs. These variances are to allow more than the maximum allowed 3 retaining walls on a residential site, to allow for retaining walls to be higher than the maximum 2 feet when in a front yard, and to allow encroachments into areas with a slope of 20% or greater. Now I will go into staff analysis. Again, I will only state the 3 criteria for the first request, but please let me know if you'd like me to repeat one of the criteria. The first request is for the maximum number of retaining walls. Criteria 1, where by reason of exceptional narrowness, shallowness, or shape of a specific piece of property at the time of the enactment of the zoning ordinance, or by reason of exceptional topographic conditions or other extraordinary and exceptional situation or condition, such a piece of property is not able to accommodate development as required under the ordinance. This subject property is located within the Avalon subdivision with over 20% slopes across the majority of the property. These exceptional topographic conditions require the use of retaining walls to provide effective drainage, access, and support for development. The Franklin zoning ordinance allows a maximum of 3 retaining walls for a residential lot. The applicant is requesting a total of 7 retaining walls. The applicant has determined that this is the minimum number of retaining walls required to develop a single-family home on this lot. Due to the exceptional slope conditions across the site, staff finds this criteria for request 1 to be met. Criteria 2. The strict application of any provision enacted under the zoning ordinance would result in peculiar and exceptional practical difficulties to, or exceptional or undue hardship upon, the owner of the property. Strict application of the zoning ordinance would create practical difficulties in the development of the site due to the exceptional topographic conditions that exist. Due to the exceptional slope conditions across the site, more than 3 retaining walls are required to support development of this site. Staff finds this criteria for request 1 to be met. Criteria 3. Such relief may be granted without substantial detriment to the public good and without substantially impairing the purpose and intent of the zoning ordinance. Allowing for additional retaining walls on the site would not be a detriment to the public good, nor would it impair the purpose and intent of the zoning ordinance. The zoning ordinance limits the number of retaining walls on a residential site in order to prevent a site from being dominated by retaining walls, which may result in aesthetic concerns for neighboring property owners and the community. Because several neighboring lots within the Avalon subdivision have also had to implement unique retaining walls, this development would not contradict the aesthetic qualities of the neighborhood. In addition, the applicant has determined that 7 retaining walls is the minimum number necessary for development on the lot. Therefore, there would not be an excess of retaining walls dominating the site. Staff finds this criteria for request 1 to be met. Now I will go through the staff analysis for request 2, which is the maximum height for front yard retaining walls. Regarding criteria 1, as stated previously, there are exceptional topographic conditions which require the use of retaining walls to provide effective drainage, access, and support for development. The Franklin zoning ordinance allows for retaining walls located in the front yard of a residence to be a maximum of 2 feet in height. However, the exceptional slopes across the property require higher retaining walls. The applicant has requested retaining wall heights up to 6 feet in the front yard of the property. Due to these exceptional conditions across the site, staff finds this criteria for request 2 to be met. Strict application of the zoning ordinance would create practical difficulties in the development of the site due to exceptional topographic conditions that exist. Due to the exceptional slope conditions across the site, retaining walls higher than 2 feet are necessary to support the height. Staff finds this criteria for request 2 to be met. I apologize, I just repeated myself.
Understandable, there's a lot in this staff report.
Trust me, you're doing great.
Regarding criteria 3, allowing for taller retaining walls in the front yard of the site would not be a detriment to the public good, nor would it impair the purpose and intent of the zoning ordinance. The zoning ordinance limits the number and retaining of the number and height of retaining walls on a residential site in order to prevent a site from being dominated by retaining walls, which may result in aesthetic concerns for neighboring property owners and the community. Because several neighboring lots within the Avalon subdivision have also had to implement unique retaining walls, this development would not contradict the aesthetic qualities of the neighborhood. In addition, the applicant has determined that 6-foot retaining walls are the minimum height necessary to support the proposed driveway. Staff finds this criteria for request 2 to be met. Now I will go through the staff analysis for request 3, which is encroachment into areas with slopes of 20% or greater. Regarding criteria 1, the slopes on this lot lead to exceptional topographic conditions which require the encroachment on 20% slopes in order to provide access and support development. The Franklin zoning ordinance does not allow for encroachment into areas with 20% or greater slopes, so the applicant has requested encroachment into areas of 20% or greater slope to build the proposed residential structure. Staff recognizes the exceptional slope conditions across the site and believes that encroachment into areas with a slope of 20% or greater is necessary in this case. For these reasons, staff finds this criteria for request 3 to be met. Regarding criteria 2, strict application of the zoning ordinance would create practical difficulties in the development of the site due to exceptional topographic conditions and the Avalon subdivision architectural guidelines. The Avalon PUD subdivision was approved by the City of Franklin prior to the adoption of the Hillside-Hillcrest Overlay Zoning District and today's applicable slope development standards. Development on the steep hillsides was anticipated when the development was originally approved, so the current zoning ordinance creates exceptional practical difficulties for the Avalon subdivision that was established prior to the updated ordinance requirements. Seeing as slopes greater than 20% cover most of this lot, the application of the zoning ordinance would prevent development on the site. For these reasons, staff finds this criteria for request 3 to be met. Regarding criteria 3, allowing for encroachment into areas with slopes of 20% or greater on the site would not be a detriment to public good, nor would it impair the purpose and intent of the zoning ordinance. The lot is currently neighbored by lots with similar topography that have utilized similar site grading techniques. The intent of the zoning ordinance is to allow a single-family residential home on this lot, and this variance is the minimum necessary deviation from the requirements of the zoning ordinance in order to develop a single-family home on the lot, given the current conditions of the site. Staff finds this criteria for request 3 to be met. Recommended motion. Staff recommends the Board of Zoning Appeals move to approve the variance request to allow more than the maximum number of retaining walls on a site, and a variance request to allow for taller than allowable retaining wall within a front yard, and a variance request to allow for encroachments into areas with slopes of 20% or greater for the property located at 326 Lionheart Way, because the criteria for granting a variance have been met. This concludes my presentation.
Thank you, staff. Is the applicant present for this item? If you could step forward for us and state your name for the record and add any additional comments you may have.
Good evening, gentlemen. My name is Hamid Arab. I'm the owner of the property.
Okay. Have any additional comments?
I think Mr. Claiborne have stated pretty well the reasoning why we need these retaining walls and the height that it requires. We're just trying to have flat enough area to accommodate the building and the driveway, and get to the house from the driveway in aesthetic manner.
Okay, thank you. I'll ask one question while you're standing.
Absolutely.
We'll ask it again maybe later, but so staff, I think, had mentioned 7 maximum retaining walls. On the plan, it looks like there's 5 on there. I wasn't sure if it's 5 or 7.
There is 4 in the back of the back of the structure. There's 4 there and 3 in the front.
Okay, so there are 7 total?
Yes, sir.
7's great, okay.
One of them in the back is very short wall.
Okay.
Just to basically accommodate this slope.
Thanks.
My pleasure.
So next, we'll open the public comment. Are there any citizen comments on this item? All right, seeing none, is there a motion to close the public comment?
Motion to close?
Second.
Motion made by Jeff, second by Greg. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Seeing none, the public comment's closed. So let's follow the same logic as we did the last item. Let's start with the first variance. We'll take these one by one. Variance request to allow for encroachments into areas with slopes of 20% or greater. Is there a motion?
I think I've already made my opinion on the 20-degree hillside, hillview encroachment in the prior item, but just for consistency and because I believe it's important to protect it, I'd make a motion to disapprove the request to allow for encroachment in the areas with slopes of 20 degrees or greater.
Is there a second?
Fully understand without a second that it will die.
Let's wait for it to bounce. 1 second here. All right, so motion fails with no second. Is there a motion for approval?
I make a motion to approve.
Okay, so motion for approval made by Jeff, and this is again on the slopes of 20% or greater. I'll second that motion. Those in favor, so aye for Jonathan, Jeff.
Aye.
And no for me.
That's okay, so we got one no, Greg. So motion for approval, or variance is approved, 2-1. So let's move to the second item now. It's actually going to be, I guess, number 1, which is the variance request to allow for the maximum number of retaining walls on the site. So going back to number 1, is there a motion?
I'll make a motion, but I want to make sure that we get an opportunity to discuss the motion that I present. So based on the reasoning that staff detailed above, I would make a motion to approve the variance request from variance request number 1 to allow a building of a total of 7 retaining walls on the site.
Okay, so motion for approval to build 7 retaining walls on the site. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Second by Jeff. Discussion?
Yeah, I think the concern is now there's 4 in the back and there's 3 in the front, and where do we stop? Right, and part of this, with all due respect to the homeowner here, is that feels like a lot. And then the second part is that without discussing the next variance request, it's now providing a minimum height. So now we're getting 4 in the back, 3 in the front, and then the height in the front is kind of creeping up. And it makes you wonder, I understand there's distinct topography, and perhaps this is why our Board of Mayor and Aldermen put inside the hillside hillview, because of the complexity of the properties that have to go on these lots.
Yeah.
And I think that's just my concern. Obviously, I put forward to approve it, but my concern is there a magic number we stop at? We've gotten guidance, but 7 feels heavy to me, but looking at this property, I don't see how you put a house on here without 7. On the one hand, the way that you enter the home, there's kind of 2, I don't know if you call them driveways, but the second driveway doesn't seem to have a retaining wall unless that's one that's in front of the topsoil storage area.
Is that the one furthest away from the cul-de-sac?
If you're looking at the front of the property to the left, it says the wording topsoil storage area is there. And I'm sorry that we can't share this with everyone so that we're looking at the same thing. So I assume that's one in the front.
Here's one right here.
Can you come, yeah, I would love it if you would
See
just
where it
point it out.
says Top of wall, bottom of wall?
Those are
walls.
your 4 in the back here.
Right.
You can actually,
Oh, I can
Yeah.
tell you what it is.
Yeah,
There's
okay.
2-level driveway. The one to the farthest to the left is going to the basement level.
okay, so the
Yeah.
topography
Yes,
changes
it's-
what we're
It's 2
accounting
different
for.
level garage.
And there is a wall
There's a wall behind it.
behind that
Yes, sir.
left-hand side
Yes, sir.
driveway.
To kind of deal with the slope that's leading
There's
to the
the
front
back
of
of
the
the
house.
house, right? Here's a,
It says, right there's bottom wall, top wall.
okay.
There's a wall, there's a wall, there's a wall.
Okay, and then over here on the other side, the side that goes up to the 3
That's the
car,
main garage.
the main garage.
Yes, sir.
Is there a driveway along that parking, or I'm sorry, is there a wall, retaining wall along that parking
There's a
path?
very short wall that creates the flat area for the landing, or not
Here.
the landing, but for the parking per se.
And then, Mr. Rob, behind that, there's the concrete washout that's in the front, and there's a path that goes across. There's another wall. Is that a 6-foot retaining wall
Are
as
you
well?
talking about the round one?
Maybe, can you come up here and,
Yes, absolutely.
just so that we're all, so is this another wall here?
This is more of a landscaping
Okay.
barrier.
And this is a wall around the
This is a wall
circle?
that basically creates a landing for the stairs. Otherwise, our stairs would be very unsightly.
Okay, I understand.
So this creates a landing, so stairs starts from here, go up in
Up,
series to
and
this
then
flat
up more.
area. And then one set of steps going into the house.
Okay. Do you know the height of the round about?
I was looking at it before, while I was waiting on the previous, I think it's roughly 6 foot, a little over 6 feet. It's basically a midpoint between here and the house.
Okay.
Which is 13 feet.
Okay, so you're splitting that?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, giving yourself a landing there. Okay, thank you for coming up and pointing out it.
And
Jonathan, are you able to, okay,
I'm following. We're
okay.
good.
we've also,
This goes from 1026 to 1032, so it's 6 feet, is what that shows.
if that's what it shows, yes, sir.
Yeah, okay.
And also, we have included the landscaping that perhaps put your mind at ease, that is well screened. And most of the retaining wall are behind the house. This
Yeah.
lot is pretty much toward the end of the street.
So if it's behind the house visibility, I'm not as sensitive to that, but thank you.
Okay. So I think got a motion for approval. We're on the variance request to allow more than the maximum number of retaining walls. So I have a motion for approval, a second. And that's up to 7 retaining walls. Greg specified that. So motion, second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Anyone opposed? All right, seeing none, that variance request is approved. So the last one now, it's number 2 in the packet. It's going to be the variance request to allow for a taller than allowable retaining wall within a front yard. Is there a motion?
He's talking about the one around the steps, is that the one?
It just allows for up,
Yeah.
the request states, and so we'll confirm with staff and Mr. Arab, if I'm understanding it correctly, that the request is for up to a 6-foot retaining, or up to 6 feet retaining walls. So if you needed more than 6 feet, that's not covered by the request. Is that right? So I would like to present a motion, if you're okay with that, Mr. Chair, that based on the reasoning defined by staff, that it satisfies the 3 variance criteria, I would like to recommend approval of variance request number 2 to allow the maximum height of up to 6 feet for a retaining wall in the front yard. I would also like to add that appropriate landscaping to reduce the visible height of the wall to no less than 2 feet should be in place as well. It's, well, 4-foot vegetation.
4 feet.
4-foot vegetation, yeah,
So no more than 2 feet visible retaining wall height. Okay.
yeah.
Okay, so motion for approval made with that condition, up to 6 feet, and then maximum visible retaining wall height of 2 feet.
Screened by vegetation or
Exposure, whatever
something.
you
yeah.
want to call it.
Yep, so motion for approval with a condition. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Jeff. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? All right, seeing none, that variance request, so that's the last one for this item, is approved as well.
Good.
Thank you, staff and applicant, and
Thank you.
Greg, again.
Thank you for reading.
So how many more lots?
All right, so that takes us to item number
Should be
5.
close.
It's going to be a variance request for a 43-foot encroachment into the required 75-foot front yard setback to relocate the historic Rosenwald School for the property located at 423 South Margin Street. Staff?
Thank you. The subject parcel is located at 423 South Margin Street and is zoned CI, Civic Institutional District. The property is located within the Historic Preservation Overlay and the Central Franklin Overlay District. The Heritage Foundation is proposing the relocation of a historic Rosenwald school from southern Williamson County. Being a corner lot, the zoning ordinance treats both South Margin Street and Lewisburg Avenue as frontage yards, requiring 75 feet setbacks. Previously, structures that existed on this site were set back just over 30 feet. The applicant is requesting a 32-foot setback from Lewisburg Avenue for the schoolhouse. Variance requests for historic structures in the Historic Preservation Overlay are required to receive a recommendation by the HZC prior to the consideration by the Board of Zoning Appeals. The HZC provided a favorable recommendation to the BZA at its October 2022 meeting for the schoolhouse to encroach into the 75-foot setback by 43 feet. The proposal is the most sensitive to the architectural qualities of the site's contributing structure and presents the least amount of adverse impact on the contributing status of the historic structure and the context of the overall historic district. Now I will go into staff analysis. Criteria 1. Where by reason of exceptional narrowness, shallowness, or shape of a specific piece of property at the time of the enactment of the zoning ordinance, or by reason of exceptional topographic conditions, or other extraordinary and exceptional situation or condition, such a piece of property is not able to accommodate development as required under this ordinance. The property is exceptional due to its historic condition. Due to the requirements of the Historic Zoning Commission and the Tennessee Historical Commission, the Lee Buckner Rosenwald School cannot be placed elsewhere on the site. Historic preservation guidelines require the preservation of historically significant stone walls and the preservation of significant landscape or property surrounding a historic building, as well as the specific orientation of historic buildings. These factors apply to the site and the historical context of the schoolhouse. Staff finds this requirement met. Criteria 2. The strict application of any provision enacted under the zoning ordinance would result in peculiar and exceptional practical difficulties for, or exceptional or undue hardship upon, the owner of the property. To move the schoolhouse to comply with the 75-foot setback requirement would require demolition of a historic stone wall and block the view of the historic Haynes-Berry house. This would result in undue hardship for the owner of this property. Therefore, staff finds this criteria is met. Criteria 3. Such relief may be granted without substantial detriment to the public good and without substantially impairing the purpose and intent of the zoning ordinance. Staff finds that this proposed plan would not cause substantial detriment to the public good. The intent of the zoning ordinance in this case is to maintain a buffer between buildings and the street that is consistent along the given street for aesthetic purposes. Because the applicant has positioned the building fronting South Margin Street and the building is situated as far from Lewisburg Avenue as it can be, staff finds this proposal to meet the intent of the ordinance. In addition, there are existing buildings fronting Lewisburg Avenue that range from 40 to 100 feet away from the property line, so this design would be relatively consistent with the rest of the street. Staff finds that this criteria is met. Recommended motion. Staff recommends the Board of Zoning Appeals move to approve the variance request for a 43-foot encroachment into the required 75-foot front yard setback to relocate the historic Rosenwald School for the property located at 423 South Margin Street because that criteria for granting a variance have been met. That concludes my presentation.
Thank you, Steph. Is the applicant present? You can step forward for us and state your name for the record.
Good evening, members of the board and Mr. Chairman. I'm Cyril Stewart, an architect and representing the Heritage Foundation as the applicant. We appreciate your consideration of this important aspect of this project. We also appreciate the guidance and expertise of the staff. Both Chelsea Randolph and Ariella Stanford have been diligent in their analysis and work on this appeal, and we heartily approve of their recommendation. It's truly a unique site. It really is an unusual site. With any other 5-acre site, we wouldn't have had this kind of difficulty. It's only 2 blocks from Main Street with 3 historic structures on it, surrounded by single-family homes, condominiums, and apartments. It's in the downtown historic neighborhood overlay. The site constraints are huge on this site from all sorts of different areas, from engineering, from street standards, from historic to stormwater, all around the constraints are huge, including the historic stone walls. And most of the site is in front of these 2 historic 19th century mansions. So you won't, one of those is on the National Register of Historic Places, the other is eligible for registration. So you won't find another 5-acre site with this many constraints. Well, given the historical value of this site and the buildings that we have, from day one, which was almost 2.5 years ago, we have worked closely not only with Franklin Historic Commission and staff, but sought and gained insight and direction from Patrick McIntyre and the staff of the Tennessee Historical Commission, from the Tennessee State Historian Carol Van West, and of the community. We really want to do it right on this site, not only for current generations, but future generations. After incorporating all the comments that we've received, we gained Historic Zoning Commission approval last month, and by a unanimous vote. There was one vote of no for moving the smokehouse behind the buildings, but other than that, it was a unanimous vote, especially regarding this setback. The site's been zoned CI, and as the staff report said, because this is a corner site, CI generally has a 25-foot side setback, but because it's a corner site, both streets are considered to be fronts and require 75 feet. So the building setback we're requesting is almost identical to the 10,000 square feet, 2 buildings that were there before during the time of the O'Moore campus. So it's not something that's a condition that hasn't been there before. But however, they were only 47 feet from the center line of the street. And because of street regulations that have changed since then, we're not only having to put in a turn lane, but a 6-foot grass strip, a 6-foot sidewalk, and another landscaping area. So in reality, instead of 47 feet from that center line of the road, we're actually 69 feet. So we're further back perceptually. The school is vitally important to telling the story of this site and our community. For 192 years on this site, 192 years, education's been a significant part of this corner. From the 1830s, it was the location of the female seminary at Franklin Grove. In fact, that's how we got the name for this project, was from that 1830s female seminary. This inspired the name of the development. And in 1866, a Freedman School and the Buena Vista Boys School were located on the site. And as you well know, from 1979 to 2018, it was the home of the O'Moore College of Design. In addition, the Foundation's Heritage Classroom program was started more than 30 years ago. And it's a free educational program produced by the Heritage Foundation designed to help students learn about historic preservation and local history. In the 5 years before the pandemic, we reached 15,000 children with that program. In 2018, the Heritage Foundation purchased the historic Lee Buckner Rosenwald School, one of the few remaining Rosenwald schools in the country. Having this school on the site allows us to tell that larger story of education, both from this site and beyond. Well, in consultation with the Tennessee historian, Dr. West, staff of the Tennessee Historic Commission, Brent Leggs, who's the executive director of the African American Cultural Trust Action Fund, and he's the senior vice president of the Society for Historic Preservation, and many others in the community, including the African American Historical Society. It was the strong consensus of those groups that this is the only place and the correct place on the site for this particular school. And it preserves the views to the historic homes. At the same time, it gives an appropriately prominent position on the site. So we appreciate your consideration. I'll be glad to answer any questions or review any of the drawings in detail if you have questions about that.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Next, we'll open the public comment. Are there any citizen comments? Any citizen comments at all on this item? Okay, I'll add, staff did include in the packet, Mr. James Redford sent in an email, I believe in opposition to that, so we did receive that, just to let everybody know. All right, so seeing no citizen comments, is there a motion to close the public comment?
Motion to close.
Motion made by Jeff, is there a second?
Second.
Second by Greg. All in favor say aye.
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 Anyone opposed? Seeing none, public comments closed. Questions at all from the board? I can entertain a motion if you're ready. If you have other questions, can work through those as well.
Can you just remind me, Jonathan, if James Redford was the name that you referenced?
It was, that is correct.
Okay.
Yep, so that was the email we received
Yep.
from staff. It's in the packet, and then they sent that out yesterday to us as well. So again, we're looking at a lot of details here, but it's a request to vary the
Setback.
setback.
And having been newly minted as a member, or another member of this board, have you seen this before? This particular request?
Not this.
This is the first one?
particular request.
Okay.
They came in. what was the-
I didn't know if they came here and then
several
went to the
months ago.
Historic
We gave them.
Commission
No, they went to historic first.
first. Okay, thank you, staff.
Yeah, there was another item for this same lot. I can't remember the details of that. It's been 6 months maybe ago. Could have been a year. Time
It's
flies.
been a while ago. It had something to do with the building behind the college, the old college, didn't it?
I think so. It was,
Facing inward on the site.
That's correct. Yes, sir. That's
Yep.
what it was. The buildings were facing inward.
so this variance request again is looking at a 43-foot encroachment into the required 75-foot front yard setback.
And Mr. Stewart, do you have any drawings of the other accommodations that you'll be required to put in that will buffer the street? You mentioned there'd be a sidewalk, and I've read about it, but it'd be great to get a visual representation of that.
They are in the packet that you have, and.
Are they? Okay.
And on page 13.
Here we are.
have.
Yep.
Basically, we've got, and then we have a section as well. That section's on page 12. So that section's in the lower left-hand corner. And you can see this, the street level there, six-foot grass strip, and then a 6-foot sidewalk, and then a 4-foot grass strip. And we have a low
Here it is.
retaining wall, and then vegetation on top of that, and then another retaining wall. Beyond that retaining wall, it's close to 30 feet by the time you get to the building. And we have, one of the things, the original school is located, as described by the students, in a cedar glade. And so what we want to do is, in that almost 30 feet that we have between the street and the school, is to recreate that cedar glade, put in cedar trees. That'll provide additional screening and buffering from the street.
Thank you for pointing me to this drawing. I appreciate that. I'd like to present a motion if the chair would entertain it. That's Jeff, you.
No, I'm good.
I'd like to move to approve the variance request for a 43-foot encroachment into the required 75-foot front yard setback to relocate the historic Rosenwald School for the property located at 423 South Margin Street, because the criteria for granting the variance, in my opinion, have been met.
Okay, motion for approval made. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Second by Jeff. Any discussion?
No, I think maybe just to justify, because I am a strong proponent of giving buffer. By the time things are said and done from the street, virtually, we've recouped the vast majority of that. While 43 is a ton to take off, I think because of the way we measure, it's actually, in reality, a little bit greater than that, or quite a bit greater than that. So just if that can support my motion as it sits in front of you all.
Okay, so motion, second. Any more discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? All All right, seeing none, this variance request is approved.
Great, thank you very much.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
So that was our last item, so all that remains is a motion to adjourn. Is there one more?
There's one more. There's one more.
Racing it. I skipped some pages. Lancaster Drive will feel left out back there. You've been patiently waiting, so. I didn't hear a gasp, so. Item number 6, it's a variance request for a 5-foot encroachment into the required 15-foot side yard setback to construct a 2-car attached garage in a single-family home for the property located at 127 Lancaster Drive. Staff?
Thank you. The subject parcel is located at 127 Lancaster Drive and is zoned R1 Residential 1 District and within the Central Franklin overlay. As outlined in Chapter 3 of the zoning ordinance, for lots in recorded subdivisions, if there are different dimensional standards on the final plat, then those standards on the final plat shall govern. This lot is within a recorded subdivision platted with 15-foot side yard setbacks. The variance request is to allow a 5-foot encroachment into the 15-foot side yard setback to construct a 2-car attached garage. Now I will go into staff analysis. Criteria 1, where by reason of exceptional narrowness, shallowness, or shape of a specific piece of property at the time of the enactment of the zoning ordinance, or by reason of exceptional topographic conditions or other extraordinary and exceptional situation or condition, such a piece of property is not able to accommodate development as required under this ordinance. The shape of the platted lot is unique, which is result of the uniquely curved shape of Virginia Court abutting the property. This lot is also located on the corner of Virginia Court and Lancaster Drive. This also presents unique circumstances to this lot. Because of the unique shape and location of this lot, the staff finds this criteria is met. Criteria 2. The strict application of any provision enacted under the zoning ordinance would result in peculiar and exceptional practical difficulties to, or exceptional or undue hardship upon the owner of the property. The applicant has indicated that the owners intend to build a 2-car attached garage. However, due to the unique shape of the lot, the garage would be out of compliance with the required 15-foot rear side yard setback. Due to the unique shape of the property, the strict application of the zoning ordinance would result in exceptional practical difficulties for a home with a 2-car attached garage from being constructed without violating the zoning ordinance. Therefore, the staff finds that this criteria is met. Criteria 3. Such relief may be granted without substantial detriment to the public good and without substantially impairing the purpose and intent of the zoning ordinance. This request meets the required setbacks for all other property lines of the lot. The plat was subdivided in such a way that corner lots had a unique condition from all other lots within the cul-de-sac and were platted with shallower setbacks. Considering it is a minimal 5-foot encroachment into this already unique and shallower setback, staff finds that it would not cause substantial detriment to the public good if a variance were to be approved. Staff finds this criteria is met. Staff recommends the Board of Zoning Appeals moves to approve the variance request for a 5-foot encroachment into the required 15-foot side yard setback to construct a 2-car attached garage and a single-family home for the property located at 127 Lancaster Drive because the criteria for granting a variance have been met. This concludes my presentation.
Thank you, staff. Is the applicant present? Thanks for your patience. If you'd like to step forward for us, if you have additional comments for the board.
Not much, thank you, that was very well said.
If you can state your name for the record for us. when we get
Andrew
the
King
minutes.
with AK Designs, thank you.
Thanks.
Appreciate y'all hearing our request. As stated, the lot's very kind of odd shaped, it's on a corner, and there's an overlay restriction on the setbacks, and so the lots, for the R1 zoning, the lot is fairly small. It's half the size of the requested square footage of a R1. So our footprint, buildable footprint's kind of tight in that space. So that's the reason why we're requesting for that variance, just to get what we need in there. And also that the actual property line compared to the curb is very different. The curb shape, as you can see in the site plan and the survey, do not follow the shape of the property line. So there's actually way more space between our property and the curbs, an extra 15 feet on a lot of the lot, so, yeah.
One question before you leave the podium there. The proposed residence, I don't see a measure on the other side, not the cul-de-sac side, but I'm assuming that's consistent with current zoning?
Yes, there was a 10-foot on one side and a 15-foot on the side. we're
Okay, so
asking
you're
for the
10 feet
5
on
foot. Yeah.
the far side?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. So next, we'll open the public comment. Any citizen comments on this item? All right, seeing none, is there a motion to close the public comment?
Motion to close?
Second.
Motion to close made by Jeff, second by Greg. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Anyone opposed? All right, seeing none, public comments closed.
I'm happy to present a motion, but I do want to acknowledge the neighbor that provided his thoughts on this property and seeing no objection with that. And I would agree with his thoughts and don't have any objection. And therefore, I'd make a motion to approve the variance of 5 feet from the side, from the required 15-foot side yard setback to construct a 2-car garage and a single-family home for the property located at 127 Lancaster Drive, because in my opinion, the criteria for granting this variance has been met.
Okay, motion for approval made. Is there a second?
I second.
Second by Jeff. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Seeing none, the item is approved. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So jump the gun before I think we're really here. So motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Motion made.
Second.
Here we go. We got a first and a second. First by Jeff, second by Greg. All in favor, say aye.
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 All right, you guys have a great night.